What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing day 2, that is rounds 2 and 3 of this 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out round number 1 first, but we're still going to be doing a quick little recap of this. Below my face is my board. It is always changing as I update all these players. Right now I'm going through all the corners, which is why you might be seeing some interesting names in there because, well, I fell in love with quite a few corners, and so great timing for us to have a good lengthy mock draft. I do this every single week. Also, if you want to get more involved in the community, see all 22 clips that I have that support my decisions, feel free to go follow me on X. The easy way to do that is going to that link tree, or 2 clicks going to anywhere you want to do, including X, but also the sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy, where you can get up to $1,000 for free in bonus cash when you sign up. And, well, I get paid $60, but I honestly use the app regardless of whether I was sponsored by them. Don't tell them that, though, because contract negotiations, I do not need to lose that leverage. But let's get right into this. Let's have a great time. Okay, so you guys can read, but I'll be going over either placeholders, which I don't even think we had one. God bless. Hallelujah. It's the first mock draft that, or technically the second, but first week that PFF upgraded their mock draft simulator to where we can actually select guys that we want to draft. But I'll be going over, pretty much the trades here, as well as in case we had those placeholders. Starting out at number 3, we had Cleveland and Las Vegas trade. Shedeur Sanders, of course. It was a pretty low price point. It was a 3rd round pick as well as a future 2nd. I thought it was good for both teams in terms of, I was already planning on avoiding quarterback for the Browns, and if Abdul Carter were there at 3, I would actually debate on taking him. But regardless, I pretty much allowed the Raiders to select the quarterback of their choosing rather than trying to get sloppy seconds. Even though this ended up being exactly what I would want to happen, I also think that if there is a new regime there in New York, they might prioritize the higher floor quarterback in Shedeur. And then I think that it would be very dependent on the coaching, the offensive coordinator that gets brought into the Raiders for whether Cam Ward can succeed. So we'll see about that. I ended up explaining this in depth as to why I went Ashton Jeanty to the Browns at 5. Feel free to go back and watch that. I think that based on his talent level, people brought up a great counter because I was talking about how his performance has been on par with Saquon Barkley. I even said better, and you guys did a very good job. I take that back because Saquon is a far better receiver. So you could try to argue that the reason Ashton won't go super duper high is because he's more limited as a receiver, which I feel like it's a little disingenuous. I don't think he can't catch the football. Like, it's not drops are an issue. It's just not a reliable route runner. But I think that he is pretty much an all-around running back. When you talk about Bijan Robinson, I think that you could say relatively confidently that Ashton Jeanty is better. He went at 8 overall in a pretty damn stacked top of the draft, whereas Ashton Jeanty is not really in a super stacked top of the draft. So I think that it is understandable as to why he would go there. But continuing on, we had Carolina and Miami trade, so the Dolphins could end up sniping Mason Graham. Then we also had the Bengals trade up and snag Nick Scorton before we got to see him taken there by the Saints. Then we had the Dallas Cowboys. That was part of that trade back right there because Mason Graham was taken before. The Cowboys traded back right here. And then they ended up getting Isaiah Bond. Of course, the result of that Miami-Carolina trade was James Pierce. Then we had Indianapolis trade back. The Rams moved up to select their star left tackle of the future in Kelvin Banks, which resulted in Colson Loveland, which was the guy who I would draft anyways for the Colts, there at number 17. So I really do like the fact that a lot of these trade backs are, we didn't lose any value for the teams that traded back, right? We're still getting the exact same player that I would want at the original pick, but we're adding. And then the other team that moved up got to get the guy that they wanted. Washington then traded back with Buffalo. Buffalo moved up for Walter Nolan. I know that I do have a resident Cardinals fan that wanted Walter Nolan over Kenneth Grant for the Cardinals, but I think regardless, I'm pretty happy with how this would end up. If you want to flip the two, I don't think that's going to be the worst thing on planet Earth. But then we also had a trade up right here. The Browns moved up for Jalen Milroe, so they ended up getting Ashton Jeanty and Jalen Milroe. Now we can use the rest of the draft capital for offensive line help because the team needs it. And then continuing on, the result of that trade back ended up being a JT Tuimoloau for the Washington Commanders, which edge rusher was a key position I wanted to draft for the Commanders as it is. So we ended up getting extra draft capital and still ended up getting a really good player. And then Detroit felt kind of stuck there, and I did see the prime opportunity with Cam Williams being so young, so developmental for a team that is looking for that future at right tackle to move up. So shout out to the Titans, who have now been featured on back-to-back mock drafts as part of the title, but they've been cooking. They've been cooking, man. I mean, you tell me that Abdul Carter and Cam Williams is a bad duo, I don't know what to say. And we ended up using 2 of the 4th-round picks and converted it for a 3rd-round pick as well. So Titans fans, you get to end up still enjoying this video. At number 33 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we are back. And we got Travis Hunter in the first, which I'd say he's a wide receiver that can moonlight at corner. You could probably make a very strong argument about the other way around as well. But regardless, I still think that offensive tackle is super key for this team. Granted, the defense needs more help. It's just you can't be the worst defense in the NFL. So I will say that Wyatt Milum's is certainly an interesting option here because he is so damn talented. Josh Connerly as well. If he has to kick into guard, you know, it is what it is. But Connerly has just been fantastic this year. Like, he's really been fantastic. Same thing with Jack Nelson. I don't like the fact that people look right here at the rank and see Trevor Sikkema's ranking as, you know, gospel. It's okay. We all have our different opinions. And I'm not saying that, you know, Trevor is inherently a bad offensive tackle scout because I have 2 guys who I would draft in the top 50 in his past 100. Like, it's the other way around too. Like, I have guys who he has in his top 32 that I don't even have ranked, right? It's like, it doesn't mean that he's right or I'm right. It just means we have a difference of opinion. History will tell us, or the future will tell us who is right and who is not. But I digress. I think the right move for the Jaguars is to look as somebody who is going to just be a guaranteed asset. And a guaranteed asset is Josh Connerly, because if he doesn't work as a tackle, he has the punch, he has the power, he has the athleticism to work on the interior of the offensive line, but he does have a real chance at being a true tackle. I really do believe in that. His anchor has some questions, but he really can bring a ton of upside because I've seen him shut down top-tier NFL edge rush talents. And I think that Josh Connerly can still do that in the NFL. Now, could you trade back and maybe get him? Sure. But I do think that we're in the midst where a lot of teams are looking for guards or tackles, to where I think that it's a little bit dangerous. I mean, even the Raiders sitting here, I'd be a little bit concerned. So I'm going to go after Josh Connerly at 33. At 34 for the Detroit Lions, I mean, edge rusher is still perfect here. Like, you need to go after it. Zadarius Smith was a very good pickup. He just led the team in pressures this past week. But, I mean, you still have a lot of really good choices on the board, including Kamen Rucker. And I love Kamen Rucker. I don't know why this guy is low-key getting disrespected to the degree that he does. I think he's a first-round quality edge rusher, but, you know, we ended up trading back. We ended up getting good draft capital out of that. We ended up getting 2 4th-round picks, essentially, for the price of a very late 3rd. Like, that's a good deal, in my opinion. You could, again, I also think we got some extra draft capital there as well, but Kamen Rucker at 34 is really good value. 6'2", 265. Just a very solid player who's been very productive. At 35 for the Minnesota Vikings, we ended up getting a little extra draft capital in our move back. If you guys want to see what that is, we got 104, 139 as well. So, like, ended up getting some good striking range stuff right there, and I'm looking pretty heavily at Wyatt Milum here. Like, you need to fix up that right guard spot. Wyatt Milum's been fantastic as a tackle as well. So, what's awesome about it, the reason he won't probably be a tackle is because of arm length. Wyatt Milum, if injuries do happen to your tackles, you're not screwed. You do have a genuinely solid talent at guard that you can moonlight there to left tackle. So, we are going to be going Wyatt Milum there at 35 for the Vikings. As much as I want to go corner, when you have a top-tier option that's going to be a genuine starter, you can't really pass on that. You can go Booker all you want, and I'm not going to disagree. If you want to go Tyler Booker, go for it, dude. Like, I'm not going to stop you, because I think Booker's awesome. But Wyatt Milum, with that ability to fill in for injuries, especially since, well, we're going to be getting Darsaw back from injury, maybe he does have some hiccups. Maybe he does have a slow start to the year. And Wyatt Milum could be a really nice short-term fill and then the long-term guard fill there. At 36 for the New York Giants, ended up going after a quarterback in the first with Cam Ward. And here in the second, I think this is an easy one for me. We're going to be going all the way down. All the way. Maybe not all the way. There is Davison Igbinosun. This dude's a beast. Like, straight up, he's one of the most physical corners. He's my where is he at? Number 20 on my overall board. And again, I haven't dropped players for their injuries. Like, it's just their actual raw grade pre-injury. But I think Davison Igbinosun, he was the number 1 player in New Jersey, if I remember correctly. This dude's an absolute savage, though. I mean, physical to the 9. This guy is an absolute beast. And you guys do need a true boundary. We've seen that what you have struggled with, and even with Deonte Banks, having his games where he didn't even start, right? He ended up even being pulled mid-game when I was watching one of them. But, Davison Igbinosun can remedy that as Deonte Banks gets back into form. Again, both of them, I mean, he's built unbelievably well. 6'2", 193. You're not necessarily going to beat him in a straight line either. He's physical, and we're going to be having a corners video coming out. Like, it's going to be awesome, and Davison Igbinosun is going to be pretty damn high on that. At pick number 37 for the Las Vegas Raiders. So I hear that the interior of the offensive line is not doing well. Like, I know that from my inside sources. They're not inside. They're just really, really good fans that know what the fuck they're talking about. I know that you guys are in a position to where, like, technically you don't need to force a wide receiver pick here because you can essentially use Brock Bowers as your true number 1 weapon. But I will say, it's like, I personally would hit the brakes on that just a little bit because you can't, like, run the tread off of Brock Bowers way too early. Interior offensive line, based on the guys available, I don't think Tyler Booker's out of the question. When you look at what you could get after with JPJ as well as Tyler Booker, like, that is going to be a strong run identity, and blocking needs to be prioritized. You have Shedeur Sanders, who's not going to be super duper elite as an athletic profile. And so you need guys like Tyler Booker that can absolutely fill space and are absolutely dominant. And you're looking at larger offensive linemen as well, based off of what I've seen with JPJ, Delmar Glaze. And so Tyler Booker is almost perfect for this. And let me know what you think. I mean, I'm very curious to see. You could try to trade back from here and, get some extra draft capital back. You got guys like Shamar Stewart on the board, who I love. A lot of really good players that have just, ended up slipping through the cracks. But because of that, it also lowers the need to move up. So, it's a vice versa thing. And so I'm going to go Tyler Booker here. Don't overthink it too much. You're going to get yourself a true starting quality offensive lineman there that is just built to the 9. I don't know what's up with PFF. Like, straight up, like, these numbers have, like, look at this. 83 total pass blocking grade, 6 total pressures on the year, 8 total pressures on the year. And this dude straight up doesn't have a single game over 75. Yeah, he has an 83 pass blocking grade. Just like, even with the 70 run blocking grade, there's only 2 games above 70. It just is so weird. I don't really trust PFF in terms of their blocking grades. I never really have. They had Patrick Paul super duper high. So don't really look at that. Look at the pressure numbers and then watch how those pressures happen. And I think it will be a lot more accurate than just looking at their grades. I do think that's something that internally they need to focus on. At number 38 for the New England Patriots, I think this is a beautiful opportunity to try to address the left tackle spot with proper value, where I think you can use that $100 million to sign a veteran tackle to a short-term deal and allow someone like Jack Nelson to be your star at left tackle. Now, I have a big brain move to where I think I'm going to debate moving up for this player, but Omarion Hampton. Omarion Hampton makes a ton of sense for this team because you pair him back up with Drake May, right? It's a sexy pick. Like, you get to, obviously, I love storylines, but at 38, I haven't seen North Carolina All-22 tape this year. You guys know that I do not base my overall analysis based on normal game tape. I do everything I can to be able to focus solely on tape where I watch the whole play, every single player, because that context is super duper key. And just, it's integral to be able to have an equal playing field when you study all the prospects at once. So I am going to go after the left tackle here. We went after wide receiver in the first. We're going to go after left tackle here. Now, I'm not saying you need Jack Nelson to start right away, but I also have Jack Nelson as a top 64 player. So I think this is incredible value. This is someone who I have a ton of faith in. He's a true left tackle, which is something you can't even say about the guy who just got drafted before him here in Josh Connerly. So this is a true left tackle. So first off, bonus points for that. But second off, I think if you end up missing out on tackle in free agency where you have all this money, you are fine. You are fine because Jack Nelson, I do think, can step in and start right away. But I think it's more beneficial to you guys long term if you can get a Garrett Bowles right away, which I think Garrett Bowles will probably go to like Kansas City. Like that's just my take there. If you end up missing out on left tackle, don't force it here at number 6. And I think that's just a dumb decision. And I am a big fan of offensive linemen. I love Josh Simmons. If you can trade back and get Josh Simmons, then I'm in full support of it. But don't force a need with a player that probably will be kicked into guard eventually anyway. The one player who I really feel confident is going to stick at left tackle and can actually play left tackle in the NFL is Jack Nelson. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes round 1. I mean, it's a dark horse pick, but I don't know why people are not liking Jack Nelson. I think it's just because they're not watching him. But this is somebody that on the year has allowed 7 total pressures. 7. He had 1 bad game versus Abdul Carter. Whoop-de fucking do. I mean, he's gone up against a ton of talented edge rushers. Like, a ton of them. A really, really good stretch of edge rushers. And he was able to withstand them. So, shout out Jack Nelson. Disrespectful, in my opinion, what the whole entire consensus community thinks of him. But this is a true left tackle. Don't look at 200 and be like, oh, you're giving us a 5th round player in the 2nd. No, that's a very simplistic way to look at it. That's one man's opinion, which I love Trev with all my heart. But I will heavily disagree with him in terms of the value of Jack Nelson. At pick number 39 for the New York Jets. This is a cool position where we can end up drafting a quarterback like Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, it is possible for them to do that. But I also just don't fully believe that that's the best route. In the first round, we went after Will Johnson. And so right now, I think that it's possible for us to go a couple of routes. Defensive interior, you got guys like Tyleik Williams here, Derek Harmon. I think that the explosion of Javon Kinlaw's talent, because he's been pretty wound up, it would be awesome. It would be awesome to see them like try to essentially continue that with a player on a much longer and shorter or a much cheaper contract for the long run. And so I think Derek Harmon would be a great choice there. Looks already great in green at both Michigan State as well as Oregon. But also for the Jets, you can also try to highlight tight end here. I talk about Harold Fannin Jr. here as an elite weapon. Now, Harold Fannin Jr. is a bit light. That's the big issue with him, but I think he's so superior to the tight end talents on your team that it's worth it. I don't know why he's ranked 83 outside of his weight. This guy has been doing a phenomenal job being the primary target and the target that every single person on planet Earth knows is getting the ball on Bowling Green. He still succeeds. And that's a really, really good tight end in my opinion. The one that when you know it's going to them, it doesn't matter. It still goes there and it still is successful. At number 40 for the Chicago Bears, in the first round, we ended up doing something very interesting because people didn't agree that Josh Simmons should be the first offensive lineman off the board. I love Josh Simmons, and he is my number 1 offensive lineman in the class, including injury. I would still put him as the number 1 offensive lineman. And the thing is, he can play left tackle and he can play guard. So you are not sacrificing any sort of flexibility when it comes to Josh Simmons. Now, you guys know the sexy pick that I want to make. That sexy pick is pairing up Donovan Jackson with him. But Donovan Jackson's now been playing left tackle as well, which is super interesting. Very interesting there. But he and Josh Simmons would be a really cool combo because I do think, based on the amount of guys who are leaving, the amount of unproven talents that are there, and the overall state of your organization, that you guys should be readdressing the offensive line multiple times. Now, will there be a threat until 46? I guess you can talk about the Dolphins. The Dolphins are the only team that I could see being a legitimate threat to being able to take him. Besides that, I don't think Donovan Jackson's being taken there. And so I would say other positions to note, edge rusher. You got Princey Umamiel in here. I'm just saying that's a really good one. But also on top of that, Tyleik Williams, Derek Harmon, being able to get a superior run defense is just awesome. And I think I did this in my 2-rounder as well. Feel free to call that out. But, I mean, Tyleik Williams has actually even turned it on as a pass rusher. He was in that 4th percentile earlier in the year, and he's up to 7% pass rush win rate. I mean, that, or not pass rush win rate. Actually, that is, yeah, it's pass rush win rate. But, like, Tyleik has just done such a phenomenal job elevating himself as a prospect because he's not a pass rushing defensive interior. But I do think it's worth actually taking a swing on him because I know that multiple defense interiors can go in the next picks, but probably not multiple guards. At 41 for the Dallas Cowboys, we ended up trading back and getting Isaiah Bond. And I think that's a really good start. I think at this point, you could talk about Omari and Hampton here, and perfectly valid. Perfectly valid. But defensive interior, Derek Harmon's here. I don't think that we can say no to him. You can technically talk about him being better than Tyleik Williams, but completely different build. Completely different style of player as well. So we're going to go Derek Harmon here to replace Oso Odigizua. And, again, you're getting really good value for a player that should be arguably a first-round pick. At 42 for the Saints, we went after defensive back in the first round with Malachi Starks. It pisses y'all off, and I understand. I respect it. It's not very easy saying, hey, we're going to take a player who probably isn't going to start for a year. It's going to get rotational reps and then, be a successor for Honey Badger. But when you look at how the New Orleans Saints have approached their drafting philosophy as of recent, it's like you drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. He was not guaranteed to start this year. We kind of knew he wasn't starting. He wasn't going over Paulson Adebo as well as Marshawn Lattimore. And all of a sudden, Marshawn Lattimore's gone. And now Kool-Aid's going to be the guy, right? So there certainly is a mentality in the Saints organization that they plan for the future, even if it's not going to be immediate impact. And I think that Malachi Starks, being that Honey Badger replacement and being super flexible to where you don't have to use him just in that role, is going to create a ton of positive dividends for you. And so right now we need to look at edge. Wow, look at all these edges that are here. Like really good ones. And I'm not trying to be like facetious or a dick. I'm just being genuine. Like, hey, look at the fact that, hey, we didn't get Scorton, excuse me. But you got Umami Ellen. We got Shamar Stewart. Like, we have a lot of really good options here. And I think Umami Ellen could make a ton of sense. Shamar Stewart is kind of just like the sexy pick. But I think Umami Ellen, based on how he's played this year, is going to get a little bit of elevated draft stock. And he's a good player. He's well deserving of this pick. So we are going to lock it in. At 43 for the Bengals, they did trade up and select Nick Scorton in the first. And you might say now, it's like, well, shoot, we still got some good edge rushers here. It feels like that was a little bit of a wasted move, which, I mean, relatively speaking, it is fair. It is fair to say, damn, like I could have ended up, keeping a pick and then not getting that. But do you want to take another shot on somebody not working, or do you really want that true edge too? And when it comes to true starters, don't try to play the Moneyball game. Just get someone who's like a really good starter. And T is testing free agency. So that's their goal right now. They're going to have a vacancy at big wide receiver. So looking at who is the best available, Trey Harris is such a monster. Trey Harris might be my guy for this team. Jaden Higgins makes a lot more sense to replace the T. Higgins role based on even his size profile as well, 6'4", 215. Granted, you're not really losing too much with Trey Harris here, who's 6'3", 210, right? It's an inch and 5 pounds, which to some people means a lot. But I think Jaden Higgins deserves the nod here. Jaden Higgins is an absolute baller. He's my number 31 player in the class. I think that this dude is an absolute lightning in a bottle. And if he just adds a little bit of route fake, a little shimmy to his routes, I honestly think this guy could be nearly unstoppable with the use of his physicality. So we're going to take a little bit of an alternate route. We're going to go Jaden Higgins there. I know Yossi Voss is there, but I also don't think Yossi Voss is a true wide receiver too. Jermaine Burton has had his respective personality issues. And so getting somebody who is just a consistent threat like Jaden Higgins is worth it to me. Sub 3% drop rate. Almost 60% contested catch rate, which is ridiculous with the amount of targets this guy gets. 95 total targets. Yes, this is not out of 95. But, out of 95 targets, let's just say, probably 20 of them are going to be contested. I'm forgetting what the actual stat is. And even if 20% of it is there, we're still talking about 12 out of 20 of those being caught, which is a ridiculous ratio for a player like Jaden Higgins that is the clear option on Iowa State to be that contested catch guy. But at 44 for the Miami Dolphins in the first round, we ended up moving up for Mason Graham, which I think is super key. I also don't think that edge rusher's out of the equation here. Jalen Phillips, not necessarily the long-term option. Chop Robinson getting better and better, but he also has had his relative struggles. But I still think that he's doing a very good job. I think this team has kind of pieced together their offensive line to where you don't need to force it here. And at pick 99, I do know there's going to be some good interior offensive linemen to where I want to go best player available and I want to throw curveballs because I haven't been able to do that in these mock drafts like as much as I wanted to. And, this week is just a week to say, fuck it, let's try some new stuff. And with Shedeur Stewart here, I know they appreciate athleticism and especially a raw player. Shedeur Stewart's turned it on since the beginning of the year. He had a slow start, but Shedeur Stewart at 6'6", 290 pounds is just built differently. And you're talking about now someone who's like 310 and Mason Graham on the interior. You're talking about Shedeur Stewart is 270 on the outside. And then you have Chop Robinson, who's also 250. And you kind of have a beautiful balance of both size, athleticism, and pass rush ability at all three stages. It's not necessarily, if you wanted to really go a very similar route, you could talk about Kyle Kennard here. But I really think Shedeur Stewart is the most underrated athlete in the class. I think he's the best athlete I've ever seen at remotely close to 290. I think if he sheds down to 280, you might get yourself one of the freakiest edge rushers in the entire NFL. And if there's a team that I would trust to roll the dice on a project that is just a freak, I honestly have that gut feeling that the Dolphins would be the one to do it. Because they did it with Chop Robinson last year. I could see them doing it this year because Shamar might need an extra year. And he might need that coaching. And that might be really beneficial in the long run. Again, we're still going to go after offensive line as time goes on. But I really do want to maximize and roll the dice on some new positions with the guys who have fallen. At number 45 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to roll the dice on Siobhan Revell here. We ended up taking an edge in the first round with the boring pick and Jalen Walker. But Siobhan Revell has fallen. Let's not let him fall any further. It's not the big need for the team. Don't get me wrong, but I really do think Siobhan Revell at 45, based on the fact he could also take some time to recover, is worth it. Especially with what people thought of him as a top 10 potential pick, I think it would be a good investment. At 46 for the Bears, remember when I started talking about getting sexy? I also think that safety is on the table. Kamari Ramsey has gotten a lot of love, and his high-end play is ridiculous. I don't know why this guy gets cooked a lot in terms of the amount of yards he lets up. And how many yards does it say he's allowed this year? I'm trying to see where the hell it talks about it. But this dude straight up has, does it seriously not tell you? That's very surprising to me. But he consistently allows a lot of yards, but he makes big plays. So I'm not surprised. I have not studied the rest of the defensive back class. I've studied a lot of the corner class that I think can transfer to DB. So these guys have their initial grades, but Kamari Ramsey was not one of them. So I do think, though, this class is very loaded with defensive back talent to where certain teams like the Bears can't afford to wait to 78 and still get themselves a very good player. When I know I talked about this for the Dolphins where they can end up working well with a guard at their pick 99. For the Bears, I think it's a little bit more crucial because with the Dolphins, their offense is so quick tempo that quality doesn't necessarily matter to the same degree. It's just the short-term quality of basically don't let a quick win. Versus for the Bears, when Caleb takes so damn long, I think there is a lot of value to having a congealed high-end offensive line. And so I'm going to roll the dice on Donovan Jackson. Let's have this sexy story. Let's get Josh Simmons, his true left tackle, Donovan Jackson, his true guard, who also has left tackle experience now, which is crazy. But I said he has left tackle potential. He's gotten a lot better too. But the fact that you could end up getting yourself, and this does fit with the Bears mantra this year, a lot of pretty much tackle versatility across the board is going to be so damn beneficial for your team. Because when injuries pop up, you're never sticking some bum out there. You're legitimately having someone who has experience and has talent in that position. So I know it kind of says F you to Karan Amagaji, but we're going to have Josh Simmons at left, Donovan Jackson or left tackle, and then Donovan Jackson at left guard. And of course, if you want to kick one of these guys to center, you can, and it's not going to be the end of the world. But having chemistry on the offensive line is arguably more important than having pure talent. And so being able to have that instant chemistry right away is just, I don't know, it sits right with me. At 47 for the Indianapolis Colts, defensive back, super crucial. And they went after someone who's 230 pounds last year with Jalen Charlies and kicked him to linebacker. This guy's a little bit more of a pure safety here. And Nick Eamon-Wari, this dude's an absolute savage. 4 interceptions on the year, multiple pick sixes as well on the year. And so I am perfectly happy taking him here. You guys know how much I love taking him there. So being able to acquire extra draft capital while also being able to get Nick Eamon-Wari and a playmaker on offense in Colston Loveland, that is kind of dreamy to me, and I really do like how that ended up working out. At 48 for the Seattle Seahawks, I do think quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier is in the equation here, but Geno Smith is someone who really does have a grip on the locker room, and I don't think that you need to force your hand in that. Now, some people got issues with me going after Arianti Urzuri. I honestly think he should play guard in the short run anyway, but you can't say that Abe Lucas is your guy. I mean, you were complaining about him like 3 weeks ago being not on the field, and then all of a sudden, just because he's a talented player, which we've already known he's a talented player, there's no need for tackle. The talent of Abe Lucas has never been in question. He's a really good player. But the real issue is the fact that he can't stay healthy, and the best ability is availability. So having someone who can play guard, if, let's just say, Abe Lucas continues to remain healthy, you might end up with an absolute savage guard here in Urzuri. But history tends to show us that he's probably going to end up being your tackle. So just putting that out there. I know we had some debates in the comments section, so it's just worth to bring up for everybody who was not included in there. Now, other positions for the Seattle Seahawks to draft, I talked about defensive back a multitude of times, and if Nick Eamon-Warry were there, I'd debate it, but this is a perfect spot for me to trade back because I am in love with Ransom and Watts. I don't want to get too close to the Bills here because that's probably going to be one of my picks for them. Just like, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for both of those teams that are looking for an elite top-end safety, and this draft has them. This draft really does have them. So who's worth trading up for? I forgot to say Ben Morrison's returning in this. That's like the one guy, just because he's a true junior, ended up having a hip injury. You guys should know that he's returning based on the fact he's my number 3 player, and I haven't drafted him. But again, you guys aren't probably always looking at my board, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So the guy who I'm looking at right now is Eli, who is certainly a target for me at 49. So I'm looking at some teams that might want to get in on the action. And like other players, you could talk about the running backs here for sure, because we're starting to get into that really good territory where, you could talk about Jonah Coleman, Amarian Campton, even Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, like a really good group of tier 2 running backs in this class. And let's not even... Cam Scatterbo is actually a beast. I really like Cam Scatterbo. This guy's had such a phenomenal year. Very under the radar player. Got to give him a shout out. But there's just really good backs in this class. And so you could certainly try to argue that is on the table. But Eli Manor, I think he's it's him and Trey Harris. But Eli Manor, I think, is a better player. His offense is just so garbo. That I think that it's time to look for a team that wants to get a legitimate weapon on the table. And I'm looking at the Broncos right here, and I really could use that deep speed for Io Manor. And he's really good after the catch as well. Again, the offense is just, it's not good. It's not good. You could also talk about, man, there's so many good wide receivers. There's no way that would be the primary guy to trade up for. How about offensive line? We do have some good players here. You talk about Armand Membu, who's a top player, but Jonas Savania as well. And I'm looking at some teams. Technically, the Niners would be in the equation, even though they went Will Campbell in the first. I'm not going to go there for them. But I'm trying to see some teams that would probably value interior offensive line talent, and I'm looking pretty heavily at the Texans. The Texans ended up going in the first with Luther Burden. I think that's certainly an interesting selection because it caught me off guard when I ended up doing it. But I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense. And, looking at the defensive interior talent, the next best guy, in my opinion, is sitting here with Aeneas Peebles, who is just so dominant. It's a tough spot to be in for the Seahawks because of the fact that there's a lot of options to where you don't need to trade up for him. I honestly might say we're screwed. We're going to be screwed. How about that? I don't think that we're taking too long on the trade back. I don't think the Seahawks are going to get a deal done at this spot. And so I'm going to go after the best safety here. Xavier Watts just feels like a Seahawk to me. Him and Lathan Ransom for different reasons. Ransom's just that enforcer that you're looking for, and he's super fluid. He's, when healthy, one of the best players in the whole entire country. I really do think that about Ransom. And Xavier Watts, well, he's just a ball hawk. He really is a ball hawk. I think he had 7 interceptions last year, already has 4 this year, and it's done even better as time has gone on. I believe this past week he had 2 pass breakups and an interception as well. Like a legitimate week-by-week stud. and you can't go wrong with either one. I'll go with Watts just because I think he's been a little bit healthier, but you really can't go wrong with both of those guys. At 49 for the Panthers, we ended up going in the first round for an edge rusher via trade back as well. So we ended up getting good value from Miami. That's why we have pick number 98 right there. And we got James Pierce. And you can't really go wrong with this pick because there's so many things that we can't address. You can talk about quarterback here with Garrett Nussmeier. Like, it is possible to upgrade with Garrett Nussmeier right now. And honestly, I am kind of tempted to do it. Cornerback, you got Darian Porter here, which I think getting a large, heavy corner like him, who is my number 34 player, it's in his first year of starting as a corner, but this dude has just been unreal this year. Very his flight of foot? Yeah, that's how you say it. His feet are very, very light for a 6'4" corner. He does such a good job. And honestly, I want to roll the dice. I haven't done this for the Panthers. I want to just go pretty heavy on the defensive side. I know there's some good offensive weapons, but let's just rock it with the defensive side for right now with Darian Porter. And number 50 for the San Francisco 49ers. So we went Will Campbell, who somehow fell to them in the first round. Here at this pick, let's go defensive line. And the best guys available, I think, are going to be the edge rushers. And Kyle Kennard's an absolute savage to me. I don't know why he doesn't get respected enough, but the dude's near 260 pounds. This guy is extremely productive, and he's productive even with the fact that he got injured mid-season. And even when not healthy, this dude is well worth a second-round pick, so we snipe him there at pick number 50. At 51 for the Denver Broncos, we still could get Eli Kyle-Maynard here. I really, I could see that happening. Left tackle wise, I don't really see anybody here that's necessarily worth it. Even on the interior of the offensive line, I don't see anybody who's like legitimately tackle versatile. So I have my issues there. And I really do think that wide receiver and tight end are the best ways outside of left tackle to make this team improve. And Io Maynard is that big-bodied receiver who is fluid, who is a good blocker. Stanford knows how to train these guys how to block too. And so it's going to be just somebody who I trust. I mean, outside of that drop rate, which is not great, but I also don't really think that it's fully on him. I will have to reevaluate that. Stanford tape finally actually just came out. So really excited to see some Eli Kyle-Maynard for this year. But his whole entire offense has been absolute ass. Like, legitimate ass this year. And Jalen Royals could be a fun one, but, you know, Eli Kyle-Maynard, was he 6'2", right? He's 6'2", 210. I thoroughly believe that he could be a big difference maker there for the Broncos. So you got yourself your Tyler Warren and your Eli Kyle-Maynard. You know, you're totally revamping that receiving core, who already, I mean, Bo Nix's already done such a good job. Imagine now that he has legitimate weapons there as well that have been added to what he's already had success with. At 52 for the Falcons, if we had a good nose tackle here, I know that it's been brought up. Could be the move. Could be, but not a fan of it. I'm going to be honest, not a fan of the options here at defensive interior. We already went after edge in the first, and we all know that's the route to go. I mean, Mikael Williams makes a ton of sense. I do think you could double up at edge here because it's like Donovan Ezirawaku. Like, can you say no to him and Mikael Williams? Like, I don't know. And like, you could also talk about corner. That's something that I know that you guys are not a fan of. I know that you guys are not a huge corner guy for the Atlanta Falcons here, but I do think that you could also look at that third wide receiver. When you look at Jalen Royals, his after the catch ability really does complement, you know, everything that you guys have built with Drake London there, as well as why am I forgetting one of my star players on my own fantasy team, kid from Tulane for the Bears. I'm tripping balls, but you know, you already have a good wide receiver room. This would just be the icing on the cake because Rondale Moore was supposed to be that guy, but Rondale Moore's out for the year. He's on a 1-year contract, so we are going to go after Jalen Royals because, again, it does make sense. Darnell Mooney is the name I was thinking of, but I do know that you guys are also looking for another off-ball linebacker. You can end up tossing that into the mix. Another safety. You could talk about Lathan Ransom, but Jalen Royals, after the catch, he's out for the year with a foot injury. I think if he ended up finishing the year off, he would have been that fringe first wide receiver that, like, because again, people love after the catch. This guy's supposed to be 4.3 speed as well, and he's going to be coming out back from injury at the Senior Bowl, and I am so excited to see him in person. At 53 for the Arizona Cardinals, we've gone after defensive interior in the first with Kenneth Grant. Again, feel free to change that to Walter Nolan if you guys are that but heard about it. But we're going to go Donovan Zirawaku here. It just makes sense. You got to go and fix that D line. And, well, being able to get 2 guys of that value, kind of ridiculous. At number 54 for the Washington Commanders, we went after edge when we traded back as well. That's why we have another second-round pick here. And so we could even try to roll the dice twice and move back again. But I really do think that a long-term linebacker could be really helpful here. And getting the top 1, not a bad idea. You look at Jihad Campbell, and he's had a phenomenal year. At 6'3", 244, you pair him up with Frankie Louvu for the long run, and you could really replace Bobby Wagner, who, well, Bobby is not going to be there forever. And I really do like what, Jihad Campbell could bring, even as an undervalued linebacker. He's had a fantastic year, a little bit up and down, but the highs have been ridiculous, and so it's worth rolling the dice on in the second. The Houston Texans are up next, and I am going to be looking at offensive line. I ended up telling you guys that we could do that here. I ended up taking Luther Burden in round 1, which is still kind of diabolical to me, but there's a reason why. Well, look at where we're at here. And Tate Ratledge is the highest floor guard that is left. You can talk about Jonas Savania here as well, because I know you guys like taking some tackle versatile guys, but I'm a big fan of Tate Ratledge, and I think that he deserves to be at least in this consideration, trying to boost his grade back up, and so he goes there at 55. At 56 for the Baltimore Ravens, we ended up going, did we do wide receiver in the first? We did not. Luther Burden was my guy for him. Went Trey Amos in the first. We're going to look at wide receiver here in the second, and I think I'm just going to go right down the street. And where the hell are you, Ty Felton? Being able to get yourself your own version of Amari Cooper, to me, is a good sign of business, for your team. You're getting someone who has been extremely dynamic, even though, albeit a little bit on the downside as of recent. He's just somebody well over 1,000 yards. I mean, he's just been really damn, he's been really productive this year. You talk about Trey Harris all you want. Xavier Restrepo would be the guy to replace Deontay Johnson, but I don't really know if you have a true wide receiver on the caliber of Ty Felton with the build of Ty Felton. So this would open up a new creative portion of the offense that I do think would be really nice to have. So we're going to roll the dice on Ty Felton. At number 57 for the Los Angeles Chargers, we ended up going after, what did we do in the first? Deone Walker, who's going to play literally the Kenneth Grant role. So here in the second, there's a couple routes to go. Talk about center. And actually, Jonas Savania, kind of perfect for that, because if you want him to play guard, he play guard. If you need him to moonlight at tackle, you can moonlight at tackle. If you need him to play center because Bozeman, have him play center. And that's what's sexy about the Jonas Savania pick at this point, and honestly, it's where I'm really heavily leaning. Corner-wise, I think you guys have actually done a really good job patching it up. So I really think that this might be the right move. Edge rusher might be the best move when you look at what you could get at, I do think that edge rusher is better. When you look at the value, you can end up getting a bona fide center later on, or bona fide offensive interior later on. Just looking at the quantity of these guys, and I know that I'm going to be taking quite a few of them. How could you say no to developing Josiah Stewart? I mean, look at this guy. This guy's an absolute savage. On this year, 25% pass rush win rate, and even an over 8% run stop rate. I mean, you can't say no to that. And you can develop him and have him be that pair up with Tuli Tuipulotu as the time goes on. I personally am going to rock it because, again, you have that instant chemistry. You're having him grow there as well with Junior Colson. So you're building yourself a really, really solid profile for the defensive system that's already there. At pick 58 for the Green Bay Packers, ended up going after Azariah Thomas in round 1, and we're going to look at edge here in round 2. Look at the quantity of dudes who are perfect for being able to replace guys like Preston Smith. And Tyler Barron's the guy who I want to look at right now. He's 260 pounds, and he's super athletic. All these other guys are really good players as well. I don't want to take anything from them, but Tyler Barron is the guy for me at the moment. He's had a really, really, really good year there as a pure edge for Miami. He was really good at Tennessee as well, but for Tennessee, I do think that they were just using him a little bit all over the place, so we're going to go with Tyler Barron. At number 59 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember when I talked about we can snipe edge or boundary receiver talent down the board? Guess what? We're going to do that. And you might say, Alex, no, a number 148 overall player. That's just because people don't know Ricky White yet. This is mini Marvin Harrison Jr. That was my like note for him coming into the year. And where the hell do I have Mini Marv? Ricky White's at number 48 on my board. So keep that in mind. And yes, like, I'm not the biggest know-it-all on planet Earth. Like, do I know receivers the way I do defensive backs? Probably not. But I know when I fall in love with receiving talent. And add this layer on top of it. We know the Steelers love special teams. Ricky White's had 4 punt blocks this year. 4. Not talking about how good he's been on offense. Because did you see his yards per route run? 3.3. That's like 99th percentile. Which is ridiculous, by the way. But the big kicker in the balls about all of this is that you know this guy's going to be an absolute savage because he's a monster on special teams. And if you're going to be blocking a ton of punts, that shows a lot of athleticism, a lot of IQ on being able to choose the right path. And that's something I think the Steelers can definitely use on the boundary. 6'1", 190? Like, this is exactly what we're looking for. And when you pair him up with Drew Allar for the future, you make fireworks. Number 60 for the Buffalo Bills. This might be Kamari Ramsey here. Ended up trading up for Walter Nolan, sacrificing one of our second-round picks. Kevin Winston's actually a little too sexy. I gotta admit. He's been out, but, he just... Oh, I love Lathan Ransom, though. Ugh. You can't go wrong. I normally go Lathan Ransom. I'm going to go Kevin Winston here for the Bills. They need a second safety. We all know that. We all do. Taylor Rapp is one good one, but you do need a second. At 61 for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think this is the range where I kind of want to inch. I kind of want to get a trade up. But let's see the options available for Philly first. Ended up going after an edge rusher in the first round, and that was L.T. Overton. And it's a good move. It's a very good move to replace Josh Sweat. Very, very, very sexy player that, just when you look at being able to get freak athlete, that's 283. It's like, you talk about Vic Fangio getting excited. I mean, it's him, Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, freak athletes everywhere at different profiles. I think he's going to be excited for that. So I think that the next move would probably be tight end or linebacker. I'm not a huge guy on Mason Taylor just yet. Gunnar Helm's been a little bit underwhelming to me comparatively to what I would expect out of a round 2 tight end. And so with all these running backs on the board, I think it's time that teams, especially like Kansas City, even New York for that matter, who would want to pair up someone with Tyrone Tracy. But most importantly, I'm looking at the Patriots and Cowboys that are looking for their guy. A lot of teams are looking for their running back in the third. So I think the right thing to do, and you could even talk about Washington being in the market for one of these top backs. I think the right thing to do is trade down. I think it's perfect for this team specifically. And the Patriots, just go get your guy. And I am going to actually leverage pick 107, and we're going to get a pick back. I probably like pick 157, which was part of that Jahan Dotson deal. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I don't know why PFF hasn't done this, but it's like I have to go in and make the trades, and I'm just trying to remember them on the spot. But Philly is essentially moving up 50 spots and move back 9. And I think that's fair for both teams because New England has moved up to select Omarion Hampton. So you select your wide receiver 1. You select your left tackle of the future, and now you select the running back that Drake May is super comfortable with. That's how you pair him up. That's also how you keep the trend on Ramondre Stevenson's tires. And now you have a legitimate offense that is an extreme threat. Now, if you get T. Higgins, we can start talking about some other moves at the top, which you guys are in the lead for. But let's continue talking with the Washington Commanders who traded back. And, so far we got Jihad Campbell. We actually ended up also getting JT Tuimalau. And so we're sitting here and it's like, well, a lot of good players. A lot of very good players. And I think wide receiver should be the next of the group. Kyron Lacy has surprised me this year. I'm trying to remember who was I watching him against. I'm trying to remember which corner I was judging. Because I was like, my goodness, Kyron is slicing and dicing today. It might have been Will Lee. Yeah, I think it was. It was Will Lee that I was watching. This dude was just absolutely destroying that brother. So I think that Kyron Lacy is an absolute dog, but I also like some Trey Harris as a deep threat. I mean, we talked about 3.3 yards per route run. We got 5.5 right here, dude. Like, this guy's an absolute savage. Yes, he hasn't technically had any games since LSU, but this dude's been a beast. Like, straight up, he's been a monster. And at this point, it is almost disrespectful not to take him. And, like, if I'm the Chiefs, I know I already got Emeka Ibuka, but it's like, well, we can toss Trey Harris in there too. Like, this is a smart move for Buffalo. Or not for Buffalo, excuse me, for Washington, who can end up getting that deep threat with also that size, right? It's what, 6'3", 210? Like an absolute monstrosity. So now you got edge, you got wide receiver, and you got linebacker, all of which like are legitimate starting options. That's how you can pivot and be able to flip your draft capital for big wins. Pick number 63 for the Kansas City Chiefs. Ended up going after Emeka Buka round 1, right? So here we could talk about TJ Sanders getting a nice punchy defensive interior. I mean, this dude's a baller. He's just 6'4", 290. Like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Omar Norman-Lott doesn't have enough reps. I really like him, but he just does not have enough reps to probably get a second round consideration. So we could try to wait a little bit longer, try to snipe the guys down the board like DeMonte Capehart there at, 95. But I'm trying to think of some other routes. I do think Quinshon Judkins is worth it. Like, Quinshon at this point, the dude's just had issues since he hurt his hand. Like, that's just the truth. He had that hand surgery. Like, he was doing really well at the start of the year. And so I do think that Quinshon Judkins at this point, it's not a big need. And I think you guys agree with that. But it's just such good value. That's like, can you say no? I mean, we could technically get it at 66, but I'd probably have a team jump him at that point. So I'm going to roll the dice. I know that it's a crazy pick, but being able to get a ton of firepower is going to be able to create a lot less stress there for Mahomes. And you could use free agent money on certain spots. I just don't think the value was there respectively. At 64 for the Detroit Lions, we ended up going after an edge with Kamen Rucker while trading out of the first. And we did trade our third round pick. So I do think this is a good position to potentially trade back and be able to get even a little bit more draft capital. You got Mike Green here, who I think deserves a lot of love, and I want him to be a second round pick. And so looking at teams that could use a true edge too, I've already had a team move up once with the Browns. I've already had them move up once, and I'm kind of debating doing it again because Mike Green is just an absolute savage, and he deserves to be on a team that will show him the love that he deserves. And I'm not seeing enough of it around here. But I do know I would have some teams trading up for him. And, I mean, I'm looking, technically, we could try to move up with, like, the Bears. I mean, if you want to take some picks from the Bears, you can do that. But I'd rather go and give them to the AFC. I really would. So we're going to have a little bit of a trade up here. Not the New York Giants, but we will be getting the Cleveland Browns to move up here. And it's going to be a really good opportunity to be able to flip draft capital. And technically Cleveland, what I was debating on doing is having like pick 103 and 117 for 69 and let Detroit kind of like double snipe them. But I honestly think that we're going to be able to flip for future draft capital here, like a future fourth, as well as we might actually just do a future fourth right there. And then maybe based on that gap, can we sneak in 187? Like, feel free to adjust it on your own. It's not going to actually affect it. But for the Browns, I feel like this is the prime opportunity to just flip your draft capital for as much value as possible. And so by being able to move up, we are able to select a top tier edge rusher here in Mike Green, who's just been fantastic. He graded out like right above Donovan Ezeuruaku for me, but I think he'll just go, a little bit after Donovan Ezeuruaku. So right now for the Browns, we have Ashton Genty, we have Jalen Milroe, and we have Mike Green, like a really, really solid trio of high impact players. And with that next pick, we're going offensive line. Pick number 65 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Speaking of going offensive line, we went Josh Connerly. We went after Travis Hunter. And so you're in a really interestingly good spot. And I could look at defensive interior here and continue adding, but I also know that you have two young defensive interiors that you drafted last year that should have some leash to be able to grow and develop. I don't know about what your situation is. I do have the wide receiver spot being pretty much filled out there with Travis Hunter. That's my opinion. I think that's where he can go. But I also think Tacario Davis is so flexible that if you really, I think the best move would be for Travis Hunter to be a corner that can moonlight a wide receiver. But if you can do that, Tacario Davis is a sexy defensive back. Like being able to use him everywhere, the value's too good. the value is way too good. And so you're also taking him away from the Kansas City Chiefs, which at this point, I think it's great to go after a corner. There's some really good corners still on the board. Tacario would have been sexy for the Chiefs, but when you get Jahdae Barron as well, arm length's the only concern with him. And again, Ben Morrison's going to be returning in this. Dalen Everett's the next guy. So it's like Jahdae Barron, Dalen Everett. Like Dalen Everett just doesn't turn his head around. That's his big issue. But looking at my next best corner, I also do have Preston Hodge here from Colorado, who I love. I have him on the Jarvis Brownlee train. That's spoiler alert for the video that's coming up. But actually, I do have a corner that I think would be great here. I want to double check that I haven't taken the placeholder yet. And I think he could fall here based on the fact that he is more so developmental. It's Jermari Harris, corner out of Iowa. So unfortunately, we do not have him listed here. And so we will have to use a placeholder, which you guys know how much I love using placeholders. But we only let Tony Grimes be the placeholder. It is Jermari Harris, cornerback out of Iowa. Top tier corner in terms of athleticism. And, you know, if you really want to take him for the Jaguars, you can do that. If you really want Travis Hunter to be a wide receiver, and then Tacario Davis would then slip perfectly there for the Chiefs. So either way, I think you'll be happy. But again, it's my number 29 player in the draft, Jermari Harris. At number 67 for the Detroit Lions, we're going to go interior offensive line here. And screw the guys who are already on the board. We're going to look at Jonas Savainia. We traded out at both spots, and we ended up getting unbelievable value. Jonas Savainia, right tackle, technically also left tackle for Arizona, but he is going to be the guard for us. In the long run, I just think that he's not very super reliable as a tackle at the NFL level, but he also can develop into a really good backup as a tackle. So I think you can really start as a center or a guard, but you also have that flexibility in case tackle is the right way to go. At 68 for the New York Giants, we went quarterback. We went cornerback as well. What do we do here? We went Davison Igbinosun. It's actually so nice to be able to select him for once. But at this spot, we've addressed, two key positions. We could talk about another wide receiver here. And I also think that right tackle spot, being able to get someone there for the long run could be key. And I love the fact that you have the Raiders offensive line coach who's done an excellent job, honestly, in my opinion. He's a really good coach. You guys might not be able to fully appreciate it because there's some issues on the offensive line, but I thoroughly believe that Armand Membu is worth giving a shot here. This dude's a straight savage. He's an absolute monster on the field, and he's just someone who I think is very, very reliable, and he might end up being a guard. That's the only reason why I've had some hesitation, but this dude is just, he could end up being a second-round pick. I mean, for me, he was in like my 35 range. I ended up just dropping the value of guards to the point where I'm trying to see where he ended up. He ended up at 64 on my board. But I really love him. I think he's going to be great. At number 69 for the Cleveland Browns, and now is the time for offensive line. And I've seen a lot of love for this kid, Gray Zabel, and they have him as an interior offensive lineman, like possibly even a center. And it might be like a really fun pick for the Browns that are going to be very run heavy. But I think going after a pure offensive tackle like Blake Miller, who might be a bit more boring, not necessarily on that DeJuan Jones level of offensive tackle, might just be what you need. Don't go sexy. Just go after a really solid player. Blake Miller is, in my opinion, perfect for that. We could also talk about Emory Jones, but I think Emory Jones is, kind of kicked himself out of the consideration for being an actual tackle. We're going to go after Blake Miller here because I really do think Blake Miller is a very underrated offensive tackle. Speaking of, there's Jack Nelson at 58, but Blake Miller's at number 50. Technically, he's above Jack Nelson, but right tackle versus left. So just keep that in mind. I really do like him. Again, there's some of these guys like Oscar Delp that need to fall, but that's because I haven't redone their evaluation. And so that kind of sucks. But I digress. At number 70 for the Philadelphia Eagles. You're sitting here. You ended up trading back with New England. You have yourself your edge rusher with LT Overton, right? Double checking. Yes, LT Overton. You could end up realistically going after Deontay Lawson here, who's a freak of nature. 6'2", 240. This dude is an absolute baller as an athlete as well. Thoroughly excited to bring on the squad. I'm having Harold Perkins return in all mock drafts as well, so it's just those two players. Perkins as well as Morrison that are considered returning. But I don't really see many other positions of massive improvement outside of tight end. And you could try to look at the offensive tackles again, just like, Emory Jones could be that player. I mean, realistically, Emory Jones would be a really good stout U guy. And honestly, at 93, if he's still there, like that's a really good pick. I honestly might take him here at 70 because he can end up being that short-term guard because 6'6" doesn't scare you, right? Like that right guard spot, Steen as well as Mekhi Becton. Mekhi Becton's going to be out of there unless you pay him, but it's a hefty contract. You could train Emory Jones, who's going to have success as a guard in the short run, to really be that future right tackle. And if he sucks at right tackle, then, well, you spent a 70 overall pick on a really good guard that is going to be cheap to where you don't have to pay Tyler Steen. I think that actually might be the route I go. It's like a weird roll of the dice, but I'm going to do it just because it's different. Emory Jones is my number 1 tackle coming in the year. He was a lot of people's number 1 tackle coming to the year. And if anybody's going to get that out of him, it is going to be Stowlett. So we're going to see what happens there with Emory Jones as a guard, but as a future developmental offensive tackle. At number 71 for the Las Vegas Raiders, we already went after Tyler Booker as well as Shedeur Sanders. And now at this pick, I do think you could go wide receiver. And there's a lot of really good ones. Like, really good ones. I'm looking at Ja'Cory Brooks here, though. This guy's an absolute savage. It's a deal. Like, look at the 70% contested catch rate. That's crazy. I think it's 7 for 10, so it's not like a crazy sample size. But, I mean, I also want to look here at the edges available. And tell me Jack Sawyer is not built to be a Raider. I mean, at this point, like 18.4% pass rush win rate. This dude's been consistent every single year. Like, you can't say no to that. With Kuntz, I believe, up on his last year of his contract as well. It just makes too much sense. You go best player available at this point. Build through the trenches. That's how you reinvigorate a whole entire franchise, is by being able to win at the line of scrimmage and then be able to get sexy elsewhere. Running back also is key, but you guys have ended up pointing out several times, your organization, not a big fan of running back. Just not really heavily valuing it. So I respect that. At 72, the Carolina Panthers, this is where I'm going to let these quarterbacks end up coming off the board. People think Garrett Nussmeier could be going as high as the top 10, but he also could end up going in the 3rd round. It's an interesting spread. But if quarterbacks don't go in the 1st round, a lot of times, unless they really are quality 1st-round picks, you see them slipping all the way to the 3rd, to the 4th, to the 5th. And for the Panthers, I think this is a great opportunity to go after Nussmeier. In the 2nd round, where were we at? 49, we went after Darian Porter. We've gone after edge and corner. I think this is a great opportunity to go after a high-ceiling quarterback that you have a pretty long leash on there in Garrett Nussmeier. At 73 for the Dallas Cowboys, you got Caleb Johnson here. You also have Jonah Coleman. I have Jonah Coleman a little bit higher. I think this dude is a beast as well. I mean, just someone who is super well-rounded, was great at Arizona, followed his coach to Washington, has continued his greatness there. Caleb Johnson's been fantastic. This is not a dig at him in any way, shape, or form, but I think Jonah Coleman, as the power that he brings, could be an unbelievable asset there for the Cowboys that have now gone after a top-tier wide receiver, a top-tier defensive interior, and also a top-tier running back. At 74 for the New Orleans Saints, we have gone after a defensive back and then also an edge rusher. You're at a good spot, honestly. You guys are in a good spot. And so we could even look at another edge because Cam Jordan's not going to be there forever. The other guys have not necessarily been all that great either. But I think interior offensive line is the best value at the moment. And you guys prioritize run blocking and just complete physical dominance. That's Jaden Roberts for you. And so this dude has, honestly, tackle length as well. And this guy's going to be a project, but he's also somebody who's just so freaky, the strongest guy in the gym. Like, you could talk about stout U guy as well. Like, I ended up taking Emory Jones. Jaden Roberts is more of that, but Emory Jones is proven, as of his 2023 tape, to be a legitimate top tackle. Jaden Roberts, a lot more of a distance to go. So if you end up having to use him as a guard, awesome. But you also can try to train him to be a tackle. With Emory Jones for the Eagles specifically, I felt comfortable with him having a future at tackle because we have seen it before. With Jaden, it's a lot more projection. And so I'd rather have a tackle move to guard until he's proven to be a tackle again than a guard where I have to see him prove himself to be a tackle and just kind of pray for that. Pick number 75, though, for the Cincinnati Bengals. Jaden Roberts would have been a fun one for this team. But we've gone after edge rusher and wide receiver. I'm going to go after defensive interior at this point. And TJ Sanders is too good to pass up. He's just been extremely balanced. And even though he's a little bit on the lighter side, I think he can pair well with Chris Jenkins Jr. for the future. Safety as well is something I should have considered there, in all due respect, because Geno Stone's been ass. And you got some good ones here, but at the same time, we also could probably snipe some very good ones as the board falls. Pick number 76 for the Washington Commanders. It's a good spot to be in for the Commanders. We've gone after wide receiver, gone after edge rusher. I'm looking at going after edge again, though, because, I mean, look at the talent. And I'm looking at Braden Swinson here because Braden's popped off to me. Whenever I watch offensive lineman versus LSU, this is the dude getting the clean, quick wins. And I don't think that he should fall very much further. Now, you could talk about Landon Jackson here and pretty much have two 280-pound edge rushers or 270-plus pound edge rushers, and that'd be ridiculous. But I do think you could get some lightning and thunder here with Braden Swinson, who, all due respect, I think that he might be better than the guys who are ranked above him. Jedi Barron falling is actually fucking bonkers. So 77 with the Buccaneers, who've already drafted a corner. It is actually ridiculous. I love Jedi Barron. I mean, he's like right in here. So, I mean, it's not like me not liking him, which is why he's falling. It's just so many corners have gone. We need someone to move up for him. I think the value is too freaking good now. Like, it's too good. And so Jedi Barron needs to be moved up for. Who needs a corner? I could actually talk about Indy being a good team to move up for a corner. But also the Los Angeles Rams are a good spot to be able to snipe Jedi Barron. Now, I do want a team that can have him technically bounce to the slot and just be a little bit more versatile. And that team is the Niners too. But do you want to enable the Niners? That's a question you need to ask. Like, do you want some, like, as a team in the NFC, do you want to enable the Niners with another corner pick? And my answer, honestly, is not really. But you can pay me enough for me to say really. And I'd honestly rather enable the Rams. I'd rather do that. I'd rather be happy enabling the Rams and just seeing how they end up using him, because the Rams have done such a phenomenal job with, like, not fully athletic defensive backs that, you know, you get someone who is smooth and super smart. Like, I mean, I think that you're in business, and I think it will take just a future 5. I honestly do. Like, based on the fact they have an extra future 5, I think that this would be perfectly reasonable. So we're going to send that through for the Rams, and they end up moving up. You can end up actually even dropping that value if you think it's not worth it. But the Buccaneers, I think investing on the Rams' future would be a pretty smart decision. But we already went offensive tackle for them. We are going to be going after corner here in Jedi Barron. The value is too good. The value is too good. We could not disrespect him like that. At 78 for the Bears, we're going after safety here. It's a smart thing to do. Kamari Ramsey, again, I haven't watched him in depth, but I've just seen him via osmosis of watching other players, and he's a baller. I honestly think he should go back to school. Redshirt sophomores should not be coming out in this class. Like, just a lot of safety talent. A lot of it. And Lathan Ransom just doesn't fit that same profile the way I think Keon Saab does. And to be fair, Saab has had his struggles, but I mean, this dude is an absolute beast. He fits exactly what your guys are trying to get there, and like, you can have him learn for an entire year underneath Kevin Byard, and I think that would be awesome, and I think that would actually be really good for your team to be able to get that. Outside of that, though, because I will admit, like, we do have pick 135, and there's a lot of good cornerbacks that could have that level of potential. You could look at Caleb Johnson as a dark horse pick here, or we can look at wide receiver. And Xavier Restrepo is literally a godsend to replace. I mean, technically he's a bit smaller, but he's literally perfect stylistically in terms of just being really consistent and reliable, being that guy that you just know is going to get open to replace Keenan Allen. So I'm actually going to rock that. Yeah, we went after offensive line, and now we go after a weapon. And now at 79 for the Indianapolis Colts, we went defensive back as well as tight end. So we're in an interesting spot because I think that a backup running back with Caleb Johnson shouldn't be out of the equation at this point, you know, giving JT a nice little relief option. But I also think that it's a prime opportunity to essentially continue allowing youth to be implemented into this edge core and taking shots on someone who could be a true edge too. I like Kwity Paye. You guys know I really liked Kwity Paye coming out, but we also have Dayo Odeyingbo. But those guys are not there on long-term contracts the way that if you had Landon Jackson at 79, who's 280 pounds, a really solid run defender overall, I think that he would provide a really solid foundation for early downs at the very minimum. So I think that right now, based on how this board has fallen, I think you could also look at linebacker 100%. But I want to change things up. And Landon Jackson's here. I don't really want to ignore him. At number 80 for the Seattle Seahawks, it's another team I drafted defensive back to as well as offensive line. Now, I think we could just replace the whole ass offensive line, but they've been playing better since Abe has gotten back, and now we also have our future at tackle or guard if Abe can somehow survive. But that's a big if. That's a big if. I think that this team certainly could be in the market for a quarterback at this point, and the guy who I think of is Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn could technically go back to school, and certainly there, because he hasn't really stepped up in key games. So I think that this is a prime opportunity for Seattle to go after a player with good mobility, big arm strength, and not necessarily all the strings attached. So at 81 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think this is a key situation where we can end up really capitalizing on the wide receivers that are slipping and being able to get someone who does have some form of size to them in terms of height at 6'3", 195, who's a really good deep threat, like Ja'Cory Brooks, who has a really good contested catch rate, is perfect. Honestly, you have him, you have McMillan. Like, that's a really good 1-2 punch with young guys with good size, good fluidity. And, for the price of 81, and where's he on my board? 36. I call that a steal. So we're going to be going after Ja'Cory Brooks here at 81. At 82 for the San Francisco 49ers, we've gone after, I believe, edge for them with Kyle Kennard, as well as offensive lineman with Will Campbell. Now, at this point, I think that continuing to address the defensive line is not a bad idea. If you can handle 290 pounds, Aeneas Peebles is so worth it. Like, he is just so dominant, and it's just going to be interesting to see where he goes. But statistically speaking, he is near 20% pass rush win rate. He's not bad as a run defender either. He's just so damn talented, and his wins are so quick that I honestly say I don't care about the size. So we're going to be going after Aeneas Peebles here for the San Francisco 49ers. At 83 for the Denver Broncos, I'm actually looking at Caleb Johnson here, and I'm just going to say, screw it. Let's send the card in, right? We've gone after tight end and wide receiver. I know that we're just continuing to add more and more to the offense, but all these guys have pretty much been best player available, and being able to get a consistent running back like Caleb Johnson, even if a lot of treads off those tires based on, look at that. He's going to have a pretty hefty season in terms of carries, and he's had multiple years of it as well. Like, he's just somebody that I think will be super reliable. I think he could end up staying and trying to come out one more year later since he is a true junior, but, running back is not necessarily the best position to just try to roll the dice on. You get a small injury, it totally tanks your stock. So I think that Caleb Johnson, along with Alec Iomaner as well as Tyler Warren, would be a nasty trio when paired up with Bo Nix for the future. At 84 for the Patriots, we have gotten T-Mac. We have gotten tackle as well, Jack Nelson, and we got running back with Amarian Hampton. And that sounds great to me. And at this point, I'm in the mood to go after some edge talent here. Ashton Gillette is an absolute baller. He's been doing this consistently for multiple years now. The sack production has dropped, but I think that it's worth taking the shot. At 84, being able to get someone of his size, of his athleticism, of his flexibility, I think it's worth, especially based on the fact he has multiple years of real top-end production. At 85 for the Arizona Cardinals, we have ended up going after defensive interior, after edge, the huge. Wide receiver still is something that I really like to go after. I know that a lot of y'all don't like that idea, but I think when you go after somebody of the caliber of Jalen Knoll, and I really like Jalen Knoll, I think that you could get something that really stretches the field. Kyron Lacey, again, I've been a big fan of him so far, but you could even talk about getting yourself a playmaker. Is Budda Baker going to be there for the long run, right? And Lathan Ransom can be paired up with Dadrian Taylor Demerson as a really nasty 1-2 punch, and Lathan can come into the box as well. I honestly think it's too good to pass on at this point. We're going to go Lathan Ransom here. At 86 for the Saints, we've gone defensive back, we've gone after edge rusher, and we've gone after interior offensive line. So we got kind of like the big positions addressed. So that's a good place to start. I also think this team needs to address wide receiver. You guys do too. And if Kyron Lacy's here, I'm not going to say no. If you look at this right here, you will never understand why he's worth it, but he's far better than just what the pure stats say, which is why it's a good check and balance. Kyron Lacy's a really good receiver. I think he complements Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed well, and he's honestly just one of the more underrated weapons in this class. At 87 for the Houston Texans. Defensive back, probably the route I'm going to go. We went defensive interior as well, or we went wide receiver as well as offensive line. Defense interior can make a lot of sense here, but I also want to get that second guy in the second, or that third guy, excuse me, in the secondary. And Zy Alexander, I actually have him as a defensive back and a really good one at that. But I also would like to potentially address Sebastian Castro, though, in all honesty, he is most likely going to be a very similar role to Jalen Pitre. So I don't think that would end up working out too well. I want someone who is, well, like Lathan Ransom. And that is Billy Bowman, to be fair. Billy's just been so hot and cold. He'll be a day 3 pick. But he's a really fun player. Like, he is a really good player. To be fair, Kamari Ramsey. I'm trying to remember if he played for USC last year as well. I'm trying to remember that. But if he did, this is where I'll honestly take him. 6 foot, 204 pounds. He can actually work very well with Kalen Bullock. So we'll see how that ends up going. But Kamari Ramsey's the pick there. At number 88 for the Baltimore Ravens, I have neglected offensive line. And I'm not going to do it anymore. Charles Grant is just like unbelievably freaky as an athlete. And I think it's time that he gets a home. We've gone after corner. We went after wide receiver. And now it's time to go after offensive line. Gray Zabel certainly is intriguing, but I really do want to select Charles Grant here and see what he can do. At 89 for the Chargers, actually, speaking of a team that I think would be perfect for this, Gray Zabel is right on the money. We ended up going in the first round after, drumroll, Deion Walker, and the second after Josiah Stewart. Let's help out the offense with a really quality offensive lineman that people think will actually kick into the interior offensive line and even center in Gray Zabel. I think he's going to be going to the Senior Bowl as well. So this is a perfect player to be able to just insert into that line and then see how well he can do at 89. At number 90 for the Green Bay Packers, another guy who I actually really would have liked for him. But so far, we've gone after corner and we've gone after edge rusher. And those are good positions to target. I think those are just the quality positions. You can look at center here as well. I honestly do like the idea of being able to look at guys like Jake Slaughter, who have been very, very consistent. And, you could also look at Parker Brailsford, who, in my opinion, I don't know why PFF has just absolutely screwed Alabama's offensive linemen on their PFF grades, but they like to do what they like to do. I think Parker Brailsford's an absolute savage. He's 290 pounds, but he is just made of pure muscle, essentially. Like, this dude is an absolute beast. He's a wrestling champion as well. And so, like, this is definitely someone who is extremely athletic. He fits a Packer profile as well in terms of somebody who really has a solid anchor for his size, has a lot of core strength, and can really just absolutely eviscerate anybody in his path. I'm going to go after Parker Brailsford here. Feel free to comment as to whether you like that or not. At 91 for the Steelers, we've gone after our boundary wide receiver in Ricky White, who also is going to be a special Swiss Army knife on special teams. And then we also have our quarterback in Drew Aller. I think the other positions to address are corner, defensive back, as well as defensive interior. And with Dalen Everett on the board, it's very hard to say no. I think the world of Dalen Everett. And even though, like, the reason he has a shitty completion percentage is because the dude doesn't turn his head around for the ball. And, like, that should probably knock him down more than it does. But he's just a really, really good corner. And people like to shred him. But I honestly think that he's pretty damn awesome. I really do. But I do think the lack of ball production will kick him out of day 2, just for that main reason. Max Harrison's really good as a man corner, very solid athlete. Zy Alexander's a defensive back. Denzel Burke, he just doesn't have that acceleration that I'm looking for necessarily. So looking at the corners that I have, it would be Jabbar Muhammad as the next guy. He's a feisty player, but I think the only issue with me selecting Jabbar here is the fact that I would want Beanie Bishop gone, because I don't think Jabbar is necessarily a guaranteed guy who can fit on the boundary because of his arm length. And that's like the one concern I have. But at 91, am I willing to roll the dice? Actually, no. I'm going to go after Ephesians Prysock, which it sucks that he's not on here. So we're going to have to take another placeholder. We're going to go Ephesians Prysock, though. Not necessarily the most athletic guy, but he's a very strong press corner that is very high IQ. And I think that could actually work very well. We're going to use Federal Cypress as a placeholder, but it is my number 53 player on my board, Ephesians Prysock. At number 52, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so far, we got Tacario Davis, which technically I ended up saying, if you really want Jamari Harris, go Jamari Harris. We have Travis Hunter, and then we also have Josh Connerly. So in a good spot, in a very good spot. I think that this could be a prime opportunity even to flex and go after another running back to add to the mix based on how ETN has been. I'm trying to remember what ETN's contract situation is like, but you could go Travion Henderson right now and basically say, well, ETN, bye-bye. But this might be the prime opportunity to move out as well. I think that this would be a good opportunity for some teams. Again, Ben Morrison's not coming out in this, so in case you guys are talking about that, that's not the case. I'm looking at Sebastian Castro as a top-tier defensive back, and I'm looking at teams like the Chiefs that I think would appreciate it. But, you know, like it's so tough to get teams that will want someone who's going to be pretty much a pure slot corner. Like it's almost impossible for teams to like really move up for him. I guess you could talk about Dalen Everett now in this equation, even though I ended up talking about what I just did with the Steelers, ended up saying he's not going to be. But I got guys like Jordan Aladokun. I also have where's my guy at? Where the hell do I have Preston Hodge? And then I also have Sebastian Castro, a ton of slot guys. I just don't think they'll go. So I'm actually just going to say, screw it. Let's go after best player available. That's going to be on the offensive line. I think Jake Slaughter's in that mix, but we can also look at the rest of the offensive tackles. You got Johnny Cornelius in here. Chase Lunt is getting a ton of love. And I mean a ton of love. But I also think that it's going to be much more of a project to be able to get him to be able to work. Actually, I will be going after one more player off the list. And I will be giving, let's just see. We'll give Jaeger Burton the love here. But I'm actually going to be drafting my number 63 player on my board, Marcus Bowe. Guard / tackle out of Purdue. He's going to be a guard, though. So number 63 overall player, Marcus Bowe. At number 93 for the Philadelphia Eagles, we take an interior offensive line that's a future tackle, as well as an edge rusher. I'm going to be going after the linebackers here because the value is too damn good on Barrett Carter for us to be able to use him as combo with Jeremiah Trotter in that rotation, have some instant chemistry there. At 94 for the Buffalo Bills, I do think that the linebacker role is a little bit out of proportion, but we've gone after defensive back. We've gone after defensive interior as well. Like linebacker with Deontay Lawson just makes a ton of sense for me, but you also could convince me that an edge rusher like Antoine Powell-Ryland could be worth it here. And looking at the next best edge I have, I mean, it's kind of tough to be able to justify that. It's tough to go after edge at this point. So I'm going to hold off on that. I think the best option for this team would be probably to look at the linebacker and just get best player available. And that's the highest ceiling linebacker there in Deontay Lawson. At 95 for the Kansas City Chiefs, I know that linebacker also is on the table, but we've gone running back and we've gone defensive interior. We've gone wide receiver as well as defensive back. So not Tony Grimes, that is Jermari Harris, cornerback out of Iowa. So I think now let's just look at defense interior. You got Dante Corleone here. Don't overthink it. Just get yourself some extra help there. At number 96 for the Tennessee Titans, we've gone after edge. We've gone after right tackle. And now we can go after that wide receiver position. Look at all these great players on the board right here. And, to be fair, it does look a little bit more underwhelming than what you'd probably want. But you do have some really good weapons here. Kobe Hudson's an absolute beast. I mean, 6'1", 200. But like looking at my next best wide receiver that I have, fuck Bo Collins, based on how inconsistent he's played this year, it's very, very irritating. Deion Burks actually would work very well in this offense, but I'm going to try to see. Colby Young needs to get reevaluated. Andrew Armstrong's the guy. Abso-frickin-lutely. My number 66 player on my board. And of course, why do you not have him, PFF? Why? Devontae Ross is going to be the placeholder. You guys know how I roll with it. But my number 66 player in the draft, Andrew Armstrong, wide receiver out of Arkansas. I mean, he's a fabulous wide receiver. He's a super smooth route runner. He's been uber reliable. I mean, he's just a fantastic player. And I just don't know why nobody wants to give him the love that he should get. And number 97 for the Vikings, This is going to be crucial for that running back pick, and imagine getting Trey Henderson here at 97. I mean, let's look back. We ended up getting a little bit of a trade back there with Wyatt Milam. Then we ended up getting Trey Henderson. That is such a good 1-2 punch. And at number 98, we have the Carolina Panthers, and this is such a good location as well to go after a pure deep threat here in Jalen Noel, who I absolutely adore. At number 99 for the Miami Dolphins, we've gone after defensive interior, and then we also did, what did we do in the second round? What did we do? We went after edge rusher, so we ended up retooling that defensive line. I ended up saying we're going to go after offensive line here, and that's exactly what we're going to do. A lot of very, very good talents, but we're going after the players that I really love, and Anthony Belton as well as Jake Slaughter. I think we have a tall enough quarterback to where Anthony Belton, who has that physicality, will actually be more valuable at 6'6", 336. And, I just want to see how damn talented this team can get with an absolute mauler there on the offensive line. At number 100 for the Los Angeles Rams, I'm debating trading with the Vikings here just because I know that the Minnesota Vikings are a team that are within striking range. And let's see, I would want to move up for a corner for them. And because I do know the Niners are sitting here, and I'd probably want to go after a corner for them as well. I think Dalen Everett, the physicality is certainly there. And so I actually think I'm going to rock with it. I think I am. So we're going to be trading with the Minnesota Vikings, and it's just going to be a short range trade. So I think it would take only a pick 200 here. So we'll see what happens when we do that. And so the Vikings have moved up, and they end up selecting their star at corner in Dalen Everett. And at 101 for the San Francisco 49ers, we have gone after defensive interior. We've gone after edge rusher as well. And then we've gone after offensive line. I think now is the time to go after that cornerback position. And there's a lot of very, very good players in this group. I think Domani Jackson is that corner 3 that you guys would really want, but I absolutely love Jabbar Muhammad. He is a top 32 player. You just have to be willing to work with his arm length issues. And I think that could end up being an absolute fleece. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.